Dig Site 839, Part 2. Outside of Unity-occupied space. Old Gigagalaxy. Unnamed star system. Sin of Chapter 14. Sin's 81,032nd Exploration Fleet Hereditary. PCAC Primus of Glaver 2. Seeker Gabriel Reason. The planet-class carrier Primus Selene vibrated under Seeker Gabriel's feet, and he looked up as he walked.
"The ship's FTL needs upgrading,"
he said as he scrunched his face up.
"I'm sure someone is working on it,"
Junior Seeker Stone said. He looked down at the short blonde-haired woman next to him.
"I'm sure there is,"
he replied dryly in his deep voice.
"What do you think about the recent news from Prine?"
"Vague."
"Huh."
Gabriel laughed dryly.
"You don't believe that they have descended into civil war?"
"No, but I'm sure Sin from the closest chapters will find out,"
she replied as she walked.
"Yes."
Gabriel continued to walk down the center of the passageway as a squad of Unity space guards headed towards them. The USG squad members moved to the side and stood like statues as he and Stone walked past.
"What do you think of the mission so far?"
"Lots of dead planets,"
she replied. Gabriel smiled, and he felt the creases in the corner of his face. The two of them walked through a few more passageways, while passing various ranks of Sins and various species. Another squad of USG were patrolling, and passed Unity space fleet crews who were upgrading the ship.
"Ford, grab that nut gun and check Agar's work,"
a small Temper said to a Lincoln. A group of off-duty Unity assault troopers walked out of an open hatch, talking about the food they had just eaten, and how bored they were.
"I wish I was in cryo like the others,"
a tall and thick Raja Thon species said, as he walked next to a Temper species that stood a third of his height.
"Sleeping and only waking for the action?"
He paused as another spoke.
"Dream job,"
an Inkling said. Gabriel stopped and looked down at Stone.
"We will talk in a few hours. I have a meeting with Seeker Levi in my quarters."
"Yes, Seeker Gabriel,"
she replied. Gabriel stopped at the hatch to his quarters that had two USGs standing guard.
"Thank you, specialists,"
he said as they opened the hatch. They saluted by clenching their left fist and placing it to the center of their chest. Their right hands stayed open and went behind their back, palm away from their spines. He smiled as he walked past them through the hatch, and the fresh smell of sweet flowers hit his nose. The room was large with plenty of space. Two hatches led to his bedroom and washroom. Standing to the side was a human, looking at an old painting of the former capital planet of the Center's belt in Chapter 14.
"Sit down,"
he said, as he walked in towards his chair behind a desk.
"Are you prepared?"
he said as he sat down and rubbed his hard, wrinkled skin with a trimmed beard.
"Thank you, Gabriel. I am prepared, and I believe we will find good positions for Unity to expand into."
Gabriel smiled and lifted his hand to his mouth as he coughed.
"Sorry about that. I'm in agreement. Unity will expand and—"
He stopped as the hairs on his body went hard. A cold feeling rushed over him, but at the same time, he felt hotter than he felt for a long time. The old dark feeling rushed over him that he thought he would never feel again. His heart thudded, and he looked down at his hands that were shaking.
"No."
"Gabriel,"
Levi said.
"What's wrong?"
"It's back,"
he said, questioning himself as he clenched his shaking fists.
"I sensed. Not another one."
"Sensed what? Another what?"
"We need to change course."
He stood up.
"I need to contact Specialist Admiral now."
Connor. The wind blew the grass where Connor stood. "Molly?" he said as he stepped back slowly. "Molly, it's looking at me. It's not frozen." He stayed looking at the white and ghostly alien. Every step back he felt like he would drop to the floor as his body shook. The alien's mouth was open, showing rows of large teeth. It started to widen its mouth that looked like a mix of a smile and a snarl. "Mother's hell, Molly," he said. "It's turning its fucking head." The waterfall sound that the white one was making had become deafening, even with his helmet on. As the waterfall sound got louder, the mechanical noise started coming from the four-armed matte black aliens. He moved back. One of the matte black aliens with a tint of red and silver juddered, and its arm moved slightly. He looked back to the white ghostly alien, and it started lifting its hand that wasn't holding the device. It slowly moved to the table, as the black aliens started turning their heads towards him.
Connor, move faster.
Molly whispered through the comms.
Smudge, come away from them.
I'm trying. He pointed his weapon toward the group of aliens as he took another step. He watched as the white one's eyes were locked on him and followed his movement. It's turning its head as I move. It's gonna come for me.
Connor, they're all looking at you.
Connor looked at the closest matte black alien that had its gaze on the white one. It was now staring at him and slowly opening its mouth. Oh shit. His heart thudded in his chest, and he did everything to keep his sick down. I don't think we can take them.
Just get back. The captain's ordered Flame and Sirius to be woken,
Molly said.
Everyone will be here soon.
Every step Connor took didn't feel like it was enough, but he couldn't turn and run. If they come for him, he would need to face and fight. How long? He moved back to Molly, and the pair both stepped back.
I don't know. Smudge, come,
Molly ordered. As Smudge passed the aliens by the large table, the white one slammed its large clawed hand on the table, hitting a device. A loud screeching sound erupted, and the suit's padding and shielding struggled to block the noise out. The fuck is that sound?
It's moving,
Molly screamed through the comms. The white alien moved with speed that something its size shouldn't. It raced toward Connor and Molly's direction, then swiped at the closest black alien. It hit it in the side of its head, like a sledgehammer smashing into a watermelon. Black and red oozed out and spread across the floor. The other aliens all started moving, and they ran with nearly the same speed. Two of the closest black aliens that were facing Connor and Molly sprinted toward them. Fire! Connor screamed as fear locked his body, and he couldn't move. His fingers squeezed the trigger, and the loud popping of the microscopic sun core exploding started. The armor-piercing and larvae darts from the Skib rifle fired out at 1,991 meters per second. He felt the small kick as the weapon fired, and the destroyed casing ejected out of the side. The hypersonic darts normally smashed into armor, fractured and punched through the armor, tearing flesh apart. If the enemy had shielding, the armor-piercing would shatter off, and larvae rounds mixed in would hit like a paintball, knocking gaps into the shielding and eventually smashing it like glass. The closest alien shuddered as the darts tore into it, leaving gaping holes before it dropped to the ground. The next one moved past its fallen species and took a few rounds in its chest. It then shuddered and glitched like it was before when standing still. The rounds passed through it, striking others behind as they were being attacked by the white one. The alien continued to run as the round passed through it, then hit another one in the shoulder, making it spin slightly. Blood and bone came out of it, but it didn't stop. Then, a round hit it in the shin, making the alien crash to the floor. Connor stepped back as the alien hit the ground, screaming a different sound than it was making before. He fired at it, but the round passed through. As it started getting up, he looked down at the weapon, and it was shaking valiantly as he gripped it tighter to stop himself from shaking. He never felt as scared as he did today in his short life. He tried controlling his breathing, but couldn't catch a breath. He looked behind the wounded alien where the other one was racing toward them. A few rounds from Molly hit it, then the rest passed through. It slowed down drastically as the white alien grabbed it from behind, then pulled its head and spine out. "We need to run," he shouted.
Fuck this. Run!
Molly screamed as the white alien started running towards them. Connor turned and ran, and his chest thudded as sick pushed up into his mouth. He couldn't hear anything apart from a deafening white noise he was sure his brain was making. He could see the entrance that brought him to whatever this place was, a stone and metal doorway in the middle of the field. But inside, he could see the temple passageway. As he ran, his body shook with every step. He looked to his side as Molly slipped, hitting her helmeted head on the ground. "Molly!" he shouted. He skidded to a stop and turned back and grabbed Molly without looking back toward the incoming aliens. He pulled her up, and they started running again, and they reached the doorway. His throat went tight, and the feeling of dread took over his body as he felt his left shoulder being squeezed. Pain rushed over him as something behind him had grabbed him and crushed his armored shoulder. It pulled him back so fast he felt like he was being whipped about, and he was turned and now face to face with the white alien. He saw to the side that Molly was in its other hand, and it lifted them both up. He looked back to the white alien, That's ghostly face was huge compared to his. It was nearly the size of his chest, with all his armor, but still looked slender and in proportion. "Get the fuck off me!" he shouted as he kicked at its chest, but the alien didn't flinch. Molly screamed, and he closed his eyes for a second as the alien spun around and the two swung with it. As they spun, he opened his eyes and saw the remaining black aliens a few meters behind as they ran towards them. Their mouths were wide open, and all four arms were stretched out towards him. "I'm dead," Connor mumbled, just as a flash of red engulfed him. Flame. The room slowly became clearer as Flame got himself out of the cryo chamber of the frigate Scarlet. He closed his eyes as the room started to spin, and he waited for it to stop. "What's happening?" he mumbled deeply.
Crow-Ood needs everyone.
A light voice said from the side of him, and he turned to look. Standing a meter away was Dr. Patricia, who was slightly blurry, but he could tell from her voice. He blinked again, and his vision came back perfectly, and he saw the doctor standing in the bright and clean room. She had short red hair, and her skin was lighter than the common human. She was wearing a white coat and holding a tablet.
"I need 30 seconds of peace and quiet, then you're done."
He groaned and clenched his large and thick hands. A cracking sound came from his hand as he stretched out his back, making more crunching sounds. His muscles creased, and he felt some of them as he stretched.
"Your vitals look good as always,"
Patricia said as she walked over to him, standing head to chest to him.
"How are you feeling? And you know what I mean."
She scanned him with an object that looked like a handgun. "I feel like always."
"I'm here if you need to talk. We all can live forever, but it has its costs."
The object beeped and she walked away. She sighed and stepped back.
"Off you go. Hurry."
"Yes." He slid off the side of the chamber and thudded as he touched the floor. It was cold on his feet, and he looked down at his lightly furred feet. He looked up, where the overhead was millimeters from his head. "Who's on the ship?"
"Only Sirius and us. She woke up 12 minutes before you." "Sires woke up too quick."
Patricia laughed.
"Hurry. I think it's going to shit."
He looked down at the doctor, who was drastically smaller than him, even though she was 1.7 meters tall. 10 minutes, and I'll be armored and ready." Crow-Ood.
"Anything?"
Crow-Ood panted into comms as she ran through the dark passageways. She had night sight goggles on that allowed her to see in the dark like it was daytime. As she ran, the floor lit up with a bright blue with every step. In the next passageway, there were rows of four-armed dead aliens that were chained to the wall. The aliens looked like they had given birth, or something along those lines in her opinion. "Nothing, boss," Iker replied. "We be there 10 minutes.
"Okay. I thought be there shortly,"
she replied with her lisp. She looked back to where Yang would be soon, as he was less than half her size, and he couldn't run like she could.
"Yang?
She took a deep breath and continued.
Anything with the dronoids?" "Maybe,"
he replied fast while breathing heavily.
"I'm seeing huge dead rotting aliens in Smudge."
He breathed for a few seconds, then started again.
"Smudge has been destroyed, and there are 9 rotting aliens. They are huge." "You can see them?"
she replied.
"Yes."
He paused.
"Wait."
Crow-Ood waited in silence and went around another corner, then stopped. She pulled her skib rifle up and took a long breath, and then edged slowly toward the light coming from the distance.
"I can see the light."
She adjusted the sling attached to the weapon. The weapon felt uncomfortable, even though it was made for her hands, and she understood why her people rarely used them. Necro's species who went into combat roles used rifles and other hand weapons, but they were much better at operating and fixing the weapons than firing them.
"Something crushed one of the dronoids,"
Yang said.
"What? Can you see it?" "No,"
he replied.
"Hurry up. I'll wait for you and the other two."
Ute. Iker, the thick and wide Lincoln, was ahead of Ute as he sprinted as fast as he could. His neck sack wobbled, and he gripped his HDI pistol as he turned a corner.
"It's a planet,"
Yang said, panting.
"Say again?"
Ute wheezed.
"We followed the light, and..."
Crow-Ood paused mid-sentence.
"And it looks like a planet. I've never known anything like this."
"Inside the door, boss?" Iker said.
"No, It's some kind of teleportation or advanced gate.
Crowwood replied.
You two hurry. Something in here, I'm sure.
Yes, boss. I see light. Ute went around another corner as Iker went through the door opening where the light was coming from.
Seconds,
He said, and went through the opening, and lost his breath as he looked at the openness. He coughed, and felt a large hand grab him and pull him straight. He looked up as Iker looked down at him. Take it easy, Bracken.
Yes.
He wheezed back. He looked around, and the first thing he noticed was the rotting carcass on the floor.
Is that recent?
He said, and continued to look around. He sighed as he saw smudge smashed across the floor.
Yes,
Crowwood said, who was to the side crouched down inspecting one of the piles of flesh.
this is Connor and Molly's doing, I believe.
She stood up and put her weapon behind her back on the sling.
Have you found the last dronoid, Yang? Not yet. I'm checking by that hill.
He said as he pointed. Hurry up, small thing. Iker laughed, and he walked past the rotting flesh and table holding his weapon.
Fuck off, Scrog.
Yang shouted.
One day, Lincoln. One day.
Ute smiled as he walked toward the table, when Crowwood spun around sharply.
Stop this shit.
She paused and stared at the two before turning her head.
We have more important matters to attend to.
Sorry, boss.
Yes, sorry, Captain. Ute, inspect that table and give me answers,
Crowwood said, and pointed to the metal table.
Iker, Yang,
Yes, boss.
find that dronoid. If you find what destroyed it, don't engage it, or them, or whatever aliens are out there. Do you understand? I understand,
Yang said. Yes, boss. Recon only.
Flame and Sirius are in the tunnels now. They will deal with it shortly. Once we know it's safe, we will head out to find Molly and Connor,
Crowwood said. Ute nodded and walked to the table. He passed Smudge, and his eyes watered as he looked at what was once the main eye and brain of the agrobot.
I'll fix you soon. I promise.
This was the biggest table Ute had ever seen in his 930 years. He looked up at the underside of the giant table and scratched his head.
I need a ladder or a gravity lift.
The archaeology brothers are bringing the grav ledge, but it will be a while,
Crowwood said.
I'm going for a walk.
Right.
He wheezed as he looked up. Flame. Ute? What are you doing? He said as he panted slightly.
Getting information.
How did you get up there? That table is nearly my size, he said as he looked at Ute, standing on the table like one of his toys on his father's desk when he was a child.
Gravity lifts the other side.
He pointed to the floor.
The archaeologist brothers brought them. Nice guys.
He wheezed.
They're off doing archaeology stuff.
Who?
New people. You were sleeping.
Ah, I see. He walked towards Ute and stepped over some black sludge on the ground. His large and thick-armored boots left imprints in the ground as he walked. He pressed a button on his collar, and it connected to the comms they used. Captain, we're here.
Fast. Hold on.
She went quiet for a few seconds.
Yang and Iker have found the destroyed dronoid, and another 3 have been destroyed. Something is out there. Head to their location and hunt.
Understood.
Good.
Flame turned and looked at Sirius, who was next to him. She was slightly taller than he was, at 2.58 meters, without the armor. But with the armor, she stood at 3 meters. Thick armor covered her body, protecting every millimeter, and she had her long thrusters on her back. The armor was silver and white, with scuffs and welded patches from before joining the crew. Connor and Iker had a similar design and armor, but theirs was made for the species who fought in the lower chapters. Her helmet was custom, like everyone in the higher chapters, and hers reflected what species she looked like, even though she was a series. It had 9 small slit eyes across the front, and a vent in the center where her mouth was. It was slightly bumpy, and sharp in places where her bones poked out. Sirius, did you hear? In a soft voice, the built-in translator in her helmet spoke out.
Yes. We hunt? Like before?
She stuttered.
Yes, we do.
He lifted his fist, and she hit her large metal glove on his.
Like old times? We will awake to fight?
She lifted her weapon closer to her chest. He did the same with his weapon.
Yes.
Flame stopped as he approached a river.
Iker, we're at the river where you said. What's your location?
Cross and we are by a large tree. You won't miss it, Night Thunder.
Okay.
He stepped into the water and felt himself sink into the soft ground.
Thrusters.
He focused and the thrusters responded to him, and he felt the push from behind. They wound up, and he left the river and landed on the other side with grace, apart from the 2 holes his feet made. Sirius landed next to him and made 2 large holes where her feet landed.
You're getting heavier.
No, not as heavy as you. I'm still under a ton.
Sure, he laughed. A loud bang, and then multiple smaller ones went off. He spun around as he knew weapon fire was happening. He pointed his weapon around and scanned the field and hills. He couldn't see anything out of the ordinary.
Iker? Captain? Report.
Nothing here. Must be boss.
Captain? Report.
He looked at Sirius, who was slowly scanning with her weapon.
Iker? Yang? Back to the others. Something's happened.
More shooting sounds echoed as a loud, monstrous scream that he had never heard before went off. More shooting followed, then everything went silent.
Flame?
Crowood said with her lisp, then coughed.
What happened? We're coming.
He focused on his thrusters, and he started moving across the ground faster than if he ran. He cut his thrusters and skidded to a top as he reached the bottom of a hill he couldn't see over.
The 4-armed alien Molly and Connor described attacked us.
She coughed, then went silent.
Yes,
he said as he moved up the hill and looked over. Sirius was next to him, and she tapped on his shoulder plate.
Well, we should be bolted for them.
Agreed. Get there as fast as we can.
He tapped on his collar.
Iker, Yang, we're not stopping. You're on your own, so be careful.
Understood, Night Thunder. In a pile of blood and organs, Ute laid in 3 bits.
Shit.
Flame stepped past Ute and moved towards a fresh rotting corpse. The dead alien had 4 arms, and it looked like it was 4 meters in height. He could see it was dead, and walked past, scanning and locking onto any movement.
I don't see the others.
Captain, report.
He shouted into the comms.
Fucking damn it.
3 shots of a weapon came from within the opening back inside the temple.
Inside, Sirius.
He ran, and could hear Sirius thudding behind him. As he ran, the same lights and chiming were coming from the passageway. 2 more shots, and a strange mechanical noise started. As he ran, it got louder and louder than a single shot. A scream followed that sounded like metal if it was alive.
No.
Flame stopped as one of the 4-armed aliens lay slumped up the wall, and another one lay on its front. Further up, Captain was on the floor, with her weapon next to her. She was naked, with her light armor and clothes shredded next to her. He rushed over to her, and he heard 2 shots fired from behind from Sirius.
Captain!
He crashed down and scooped her naked body up.
No.
He grabbed the largest bit of clothing and placed it over her. She was cut up with blood all over her. She coughed and moved slightly.
Flame, I'm okay.
Sure you are.
He turned and looked at Sirius.
Tell Iker and Yang to hurry the fuck up or else. Keep your eyes open. Do you understand?
She nodded back. He then reached up and pulled the metal box off his leg and placed it on the floor.
I'll get you healing soon, but you will need the dock.
Crowood nodded slowly.
Don't take it out on them.
Yes, Captain, I just...
Stop and listen.
She took a deep breath and opened her eyes.
The aliens went into the temple. They're going to the surface.
She stopped and took a deep breath again.
I got a message from Patricia.
What message?
He said as he sprayed healing foam into one of the bigger wounds. She cried out and went limp for a few seconds. Her eyes rolled back, then she refocused and looked up at him.
Unity landed in the system.
Flame went cold.
Only time I'm glad Unity is showing up.
Yes.
He turned and looked back as he heard footsteps and chiming sounds.
I'm here. What happened?
Iker said as he stopped next to Sirius.
Oh shit, boss. Iker and Yang, look after the captain.
He moved her over and placed some clothing for a pillow. He walked over to Iker and looked down at him.
Heal her, and don't fuck around.
He then looked down at Yang, who was at his knee height.
Sirius, let's go.
Seeker Gabriel reasoned.
A ship?
Yes, Seeker, Specialist Admiral Binder said. Single ship, close to a structure, with incredible energy coming from it.
If they have been woken,
Gabriel stepped closer to Binder.
Wake all forces and prepare for combat.
End. Written by Joseph Boswell Banks. Narrated by Keith Foles.